What is up, everybody? Super stoked to have you here today. We are doing something a little different on the podcast today. The bros and I went out to kind of the middle of nowhere for 2 days, and the first day we worked on isolated rifle fundamentals, and then the second day we did some scenario training where we are basically forcing ourselves to combine fundamentals and see where the wheels fall off. It was a great time, but because we were out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't feel like lugging around a bunch of camera gear. So we did record a podcast out there, but it is audio only. That said, we captured a bunch of footage during our training sessions, so I did overlay a lot of that footage over the audio of the podcast, mostly in places where it's relevant. So you can listen to the podcast, you can kind of watch and see some of the stuff that we're talking about, but overall, it was a good time. Because of the length of this podcast, I did break it up into 2 parts. Part 1 is going to largely cover the stuff we did on day 1, which is going to be isolated rifle fundamentals at close distance, as well as fundamentals of marksmanship, mid-range marksmanship between 100 and 600 yards as well. And then part 2, that's going to cover largely the scenario training that we did, as well as a lot of what we learned about our gear. So gear is going to be heavily covered in part 2. With all that being said, let's jump right in. Welcome everybody to the Wise Defender podcast. We're here to discuss guns, training, church security, and all kinds of stuff to help equip you become a wise defender. My name is Andrew Kohler, and I am joined here by my buddies Andrew Jansen and Chad
Ruzich.
And yeah, we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. Today we're focusing, it's really... Today's a training podcast. I mean, big surprise. That's majority of what we talk about here. But we're going to talk about LARPing, particularly testing your gear. I mean, not just LARPing for the sake of LARPing, but specifically testing your equipment as well as yourself. We're going to talk about conditioning and whatnot. But putting yourself in the situations and conditions that you want to prepare for, just to see what you're made of, see what you can do, and pressure test yourself. That's what we did this weekend. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But before we do, let's go around the room.
Hi, I'm Chad Ruzich. I met these guys a couple years ago. Just commonality.
Worst day of your life.
No.
Yeah.
No. I worked with Andrew Jansen, the other Andrew. I call him A1. He's A2. Just in my head.
It keeps me from getting confused.
Yes.
Isn't A1 like a sauce?
Yeah, because you're saucy.
Thanks, man.
I think we just met to start talking about guns at work, and basically it ended up going out to the range, gravel pit, and then everything, kept getting more and more serious as far as getting training with these guys. This is our first big trip together. Yeah. I think it went very excellent.
Sweet.
I do some other training stuff too with some other individuals. By no means, I am an amateur who just cares about trying to train and get better.
I would classify you as a gear junkie and an outdoorsman. Would you say that?
Sure.
Would you self-identify as a gear junkie? And
yeah, and by no means am I like, is he some hardcore? No, I just trying to. It's good physical activity. It's good skills to learn, and whatever scenario happens in the future that potentially could harm my family or whatever, I have more skills to help defend them.
Great.
And then you, sir, I would classify you as a family man who is like really dedicated to protecting the people in your life who you love. Speak to that just a little bit. Like what are ways that you exhibit that? I know you're on a church security team and you put in a lot of training to make sure that you're a responsible protector.
Yeah. I guess a little intro as well for me, if that's fine.
Yeah.
I met Andrew Kohler probably about 3-ish years ago. It was just kind of an invite over to his home with a group of people, and I found out he really enjoyed firearms. I had been really into firearms in my early 20s, and I had taken a break from that just due to life circumstances, and we just hit it off. Personality-wise as well as interest-wise, and I just started getting back into it. So I've been training with Andrew for about 3 years, And it was about probably a year and a half ago that I invited Chad and Andrew to my bachelor party, and that's how they connected. And since then,
Arranged day bachelor party, not the strip club.
Yeah, arranged day bachelor
Family friendly bachelor party.
Family friendly. And they hit it off, and Chad shared his interest in wanting to train because we were there, we were plinking, shooting, so that everybody could enjoy. And Andrew suggested, hey, let's run some drills. And Chad's like, ooh, I like that. So, just over time we've connected.
It's escalated ever since.
Yeah.
Things have definitely escalated.
As far as the identification, I'd say I'm a family man, or I have a strong sense of duty to care and protect those who are in my community, and that means that looks like that takes many different forms, to preparing for natural disasters or food shortage, or just making sure that my family's safe at night, or when we're traveling, or where we're staying for vacation. Also, when we gather to worship, just making sure that, the people around me are in a safe environment, looking out for things that are suspicious and stuff like that. So I definitely would say I am a prepper in many different areas, but it's kind of a hobby, passion of mine, probably pathological in nature, but...
Okay, if you identify as a prepper, then Chad is definitely a prepper. Chad's like a super prepper.
Wow, okay. Super prepper means I would have my homestead or whatnot. I'm more of a...
You would if you could.
I would enjoy that. Do I think end of times is coming or anything of the sort? No, it's just about being prepared. Look at it this way. No one's going to come to save you. At least not for the first week or two. You need to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your family. Too many examples throughout history, recent history. We had the hurricane in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I myself, as a younger child, I was in the 94 earthquake, walking outside our town, condo. There's, Frito-Lay truck on fire in a hole, like the streets, everything's like crazy. It looked like a movie. There's not one coming to save you at that moment because everyone needs saving. That's the point. So how can I better prepare my family to be self-sufficient enough, not for lasting years or something of the sort, just more like emergency water, emergency food, stuff, and then it goes a little beyond that. And then you start thinking about, soap, paper towels, toilet paper, stuff like let's say you can't leave your house for a month. What are you doing? That type of thing. Nothing, I'm sure some people think I'm crazy for that. To me, I think it's just a necessary thing you just build over time. I didn't start off and go drop 20 grand on food and water and all that stuff. I've been slowly working and building that stuff up. I think that's important.
I think everybody's situation kind of informs that as well. So, like, for example, we're in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Seattle region and in Portland region, there were riots. That was very educational for a lot of people in the area of like, oh, wow, this does happen and it can happen in my area. There were wildland fires and people were evacuating their homes. People were worried about what if people panic? What if resources dry up? So our goal here is not to be doom and gloom. And you'll notice that the tone of this and the subject matter of this podcast particularly is going to be a little different than the type of stuff we normally talk about. We normally talk about nerdy gun stuff, and we normally talk about concealed carry, all that type of thing, target shooting, how to be a responsible gun owner. This all fits into that category, but this is really preparing yourself for a disaster, or it's really if you anticipate needing to use a rifle outside of your home and needing multiple magazines, the ability to carry multiple magazines, the ability to carry water and, travel over distance. If you think that is a realistic situation that you may, unfortunately, eventually end up in, hopefully not. Like, of course, none of us I would say it's probably safe that none of us truly think that that's going to happen.
No, I don't want it to happen.
Of course, none of us are hoping for it, but it's looking at the world around us and saying, okay, maybe it's wise for me to be prepared for something like that. And then it's all in proportionality, right? Like, I don't spend the majority of my training time preparing for that.
Yeah.
I spend the majority of my training time practicing my concealed carry draws with my pistol, because that is statistically, if I'm going to be in a life-threatening situation, that's what it's going to look like. That said, if you own the equipment, if you own a plate carrier or a chest rig, if you own a rifle, and any kind of setup that in your mind is like a crud hits the fan kind of setup, you better know how to use it. You better know the limitations of your equipment. You better know your own limitations. And so that I kind of want to, let's eat the meat before we get to the potatoes here. I want to talk about that and your guys' opinion on why it's so important to not just own cool gear that could help you survive, but like actually train with it, test it, and then later, in this conversation, we'll get into the specifics of what we found out about our gear. But just for now, high-level concept, what do you guys think? Why is it important to test your gear?
You need to test your gear, because when you actually go to use it, you're going to find different things about it, whether it's things you like, things you don't like. Don't think just your gun. Think about what we call kit. For example, what we were doing today, we're out in the mountains. We're running chest rigs and radios, comms, and backpacks, and all. You have all this different gear, and I think both of you guys could say is you learned a lot of things today when working on that stuff. My gear, not by no means am I some sort of expert. I am not at all. But I've gone on some long rucks before, and I've learned. Basically what I saw from those two dudes is like what I've seen from myself in terms of you find things you're like, oh, this is really annoying. Now that I've walked 6 miles off path up a mesa and doing all these different things, and you're like, oh man, I gotta adjust this, or I gotta change this, or I don't like this. And then that's why it's important to go out and do it, because if you just buy it and hang it in your closet, and then when time comes, God forbid you need to use it for some reason, oh man, this doesn't actually work very well because I never actually practiced in it.
Yeah. Jansen, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would echo exactly what Chad said. I thought of the analogy here on the spot. I guess maybe less of an analogy, but maybe more of something that is common with human nature, is that we tend to simplify scenarios in our head, and we think that things will run smoothly. We can fabricate kind of whatever we want in our head. I get a radio, I press the push to talk. Guess what? Like, I transmit a signal and my buddies hear me. I got a nice big antenna, that works. I'll send a signal way down range.
Yeah, simple. Just press the button.
They'll be able to hear me. And then when you get out there and you have your rifle slung on you and it keeps pulling the cord out of your headset or your ear protection, and you're sitting here and you're like, can I get a comms check? And they're just like, are they ignoring me? What's going on?
Most of the time I was just ignoring you.
Yeah, no, they often do. No. But yeah, it's in my mind, it's like, oh, you have a radio. You press the button. But you often don't think about the ancillary auxiliary things. You don't think about the details of how that's running through the kit to connect into what's interacting with what, the environment, exhaustion, stress. So it's necessary to go out there and actually experience it, because imagination will only get you so far.
I like that.
Oh, and maybe you're not looking to get out in the mountains, in the woods, and go for 10, 12-mile rucks full kitted out. I mean, that's not your thing. That's totally fine. But it applies to the smaller things, too. As simple as concealed carry, You get your concealed carry license. Well, it does you no good if you're not carrying. If you're not practicing drawing from it, you're not dry firing, you're not using it, you're going to the range and actually drawing from concealed carry. I mean, if you don't know how it is to use it, it just sits in your gun safe or whatnot, it's not going to do you any good. Maybe you end up, you know what? I don't like this gun. I'm just not that good at it. You know, there's a ton of... I don't know off the top of my head the percentage of gun owners that actually go out and shoot their guns. Americans own a lot of guns. A lot of people don't actually go and shoot them.
Yeah, the majority.
Or I bought it, I went out to the local range or the sheriff's little range place, and I shot at my Smith & Wesson 40 and then put it in the safe and never went out again. You know.
Yeah, and they shot at a target that was sitting still with an unfatigued body.
Not from draw.
In good
Not
lighting
from draw,
conditions.
in good lighting conditions with as much time as they wanted.
I mean,
that will
one day,
transfer over.
one day is never going to be enough to get transfer. It's doing it at home, doing it going out again. Practice at home in terms, practice dry firing. Unless you happen to have a range at your home, don't be shooting up the place. But practice at dry firing and go see the results by going to shoot rounds down range at a real range. So you can see those improvements. You do it at home, you think it's getting better, you don't really know until you actually go measure those results. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into our specific trip. This has been a wild ride. Before we get into the training stuff, I just even want to talk about
bears and horses.
Yeah, pretty much. Like the process of even getting to this area in Central Oregon. Yeah, what the heck happened?
The area we're in was like a Indian reservation type area, and we come across a pack of wild horses, which is very unique. I haven't seen that before. There's only 3 of them, but they're definitely.
I think all of us had the same thought, which is, can we keep them?
Yes.
And I think Jansen.
Yeah, there was one. I thought there would be one for each.
It made sense.
There was 3 of us. There was 3 horses. They were looking at us. They were kind of, feeling us out. We were feeling them out, and we decided it's probably illegal.
But I think the vibe check was there.
It absolutely was.
Well, and I think in that moment we were just like, okay, this is totally random, completely unexpected, cool experience. But okay, like let's keep going now. Like that was wild. What else could possibly happen? And literally,
around the corner,
less than 2 minutes after that,
there's a brown bear just running across full speed across the road.
Yeah,
brown bears are not common.
No, not common to the Pacific Northwest, at least not into our area. And so that was, we all agree, right? That was not a black bear.
No,
I don't suspect it was a black bear.
It
had some kind of blackish, fur on its shoulders, but it was 95% of its fur color was brown. The thing was hauling, and I thought, oh, the horses are in that area.
You were so concerned for the horses.
And yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but when it was about a few minutes passing the brown bear with that realization.
Yogi was going for some lunch.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. In the brief moment that we spent with those horses, I wanted to. They convinced me out of trying to ride one. Yeah. I felt very protected. I was like, guys, we got to go back. Let's get the rifles out of the car. Let's go defend those horses. Not really, but yeah, dude, that was wild. And then the journey continues. And long story short,
well, Chad almost hit a doe.
Oh, well, that's.
I didn't almost hit it.
I tease. It was a doe standing parallel with the road.
I feel like the deer was like, at that point. We saw a bear.
Yeah, that was 60 seconds after the bear, too.
Yeah, it's like, what is this, driving through Wilderness Zoo or something?
It's basically, we were at a zoo. And so, basically a journey that should have taken us, less than 3 hours, took us over
2 hours and
5.
40. Yeah, it basically doubled our transit time.
It was a great time, though.
It was great.
That kind of shows you that sometimes things happen for a reason, because I felt that was kind of a cool adventure. Yeah, we got here later. It's not like we had plans to do much that night anyways, but we got to have an adventure. We got to see bears and drive through mountains and be kind of scared that we're lost.
Yeah, that part I could have done without, but everything else was great.
Yeah.
So, okay, we got here. First day, so being out here for 2 days, The goal was to work our way towards doing a scenario where it's just kind of from start to finish. We have a task in mind, a goal in mind, and we want to accomplish that. But before doing that, we recognize there's a lot of moving pieces, and I'm not just talking about equipment. I'm talking about from a training standpoint. You're moving around with your muzzles, you're close to each other. You have to practice moving and shooting and communicating, and all these fundamentals come together in this, even just fundamentals of marksmanship come together for what we're doing in this scenario. So the very first day, we literally spent that isolating fundamentals. We did a lot of intermediate rifle, a lot of advanced rifle, and then we did some long range. So I do want to talk a little bit about that. Thinking back to the types of drills that we did, I would love to hear kind of what you guys got out of that first half of the day, which was more mid-range and close-range rifle.
Well, first off, firing and moving is just,
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's pointless, but man, is it hard. That your optic, your dot is jumping all over the place. You're basically just trying to time it with your step when the dot crosses your target. I would almost view, and again, I'm not some sort of expert or anything, but what I took away from that is, okay, if I have to move and shoot, it's move and suppress, and then actual aiming at targets will be, from a stationary standpoint. Maybe I'm firing on the move to put someone, head down, where then I can get to a location where I can actually take a stationary shot or something. But it is very difficult.
And keep in mind, as you're hearing some of this, all of this is in a particular context, right? I mean, if you're defending your home, suppressing fire is not something that you would consider. But when we're talking about being out in the wilderness and we're practicing engaging.
Sorry, I should clarify that. I'm not
that's okay.
suppressing fire down the hallway towards the bathroom. Okay. The drill in mindset, we're thinking, rifle on rifle, force on force type of scenario going on. It's going to be a different scenario versus if you're clearing your home from an intruder of some
like when we get invaded by Canada. It's inevitable.
Mounties. Hey, those wild horses might have been scouting for them.
That's not ever something that came across my mind. But so yeah, I mean, and as you're hearing some of this, just maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, these are my people. I totally understand where you guys are coming from. If that's not you, I just want to quickly say, for us, what the value is in this type of training and going through this is, number one, hey, we get to exercise our Second Amendment right, and that's just super cool. There's also the pushing ourselves physically. There's pushing our shooting abilities and honing that in. That just takes practice. It takes putting yourself in a situation where you have to run drills, you have to isolate fundamentals, you have to then combine fundamentals, and that's how you're going to see improvement. It's also just a good time with bros, This has just been an excellent trip from beginning to end. And then, there is, of course, the aspect of we do want to be prepared. So, if something did go off, I want to know not only that I have skills, I would love for my friends to have skills, but knowing that we have skills together really just changes what is possible in our local area, knowing that we have trained together, that we can communicate and respond to disasters in at least a semi-organized way. So I don't know, would you guys add anything to that?
I would just to touch base on that. As an acquaintance, or I should say a friend of mine says, is find your tribe. Find buddies to train with so you get familiar with each other, so you get each other's habits, you can critique each other, you can build a consistency training program, whatever you want to call it. I think it's valuable to have like-minded individuals that are specifically after the same type of goals. Doesn't have to be exactly, but and that doesn't mean don't go out with other buddies and go shooting and stuff like that. But there's a difference between going with some work friends to a gravel pit and shooting trash. You know, like there's an American pastime, you know, shooting trash in gravel pits. But you don't get a lot out of that. It's fun for like 20 minutes, and then you're like, okay. And that's why, you know, that's how I connected with these guys. Is like, hey, they're doing drills. Okay, cool. I want to just measurable, you know, you measurable outcome every time you do something. You know, I shoot, you know, beep, timer goes off, and you know, you're drawing, you're firing, and you have a measurable result at the end, and it's something to improve upon. So I really enjoyed that. But the point is find those like-minded people so you can kind of keep building on it. I think it helps encourage each other to do it too, versus like if you're doing it I'm not saying you can't do it by yourself, but if you're all alone and you're trying to do this, you know, you'll either grow fatigued or you lose hope on trying to have, you know, someone to help out, and you just kind of, you know, it goes to the wayside, whereas other people can encourage you.
Yeah, I mean, even speaking to that level of encouragement and accountability, Jansen, you and I are on a text string with another individual from our church security team, right? Mm-hmm. And like, what kind of stuff do we do on that?
But no, I have some things I want to say about the rifle training. So when it comes to this is what I learned from our training on Friday. You and me have trained a lot and have done a lot of fun drills, practicing fundamentals for rifle and pistol. What I appreciate about doing fundamentals specifically is that there is intention. There is, as Chad said, there is metrics. You're not wasting ammo. You can actually get an incredible amount of... I guess it's an experience. It gives you feedback. You can gain an incredible amount of insight with fewer rounds than if you were to just go and mag dump or go plink. And that's what I really appreciated about that. I was probably halfway into the morning. I was like, whoa, I've only used like 2 magazines, and you know, in other trips where we've just kind of been playing or messing around, it's just like 8 or 9 megs would have been spent. So it is doable to gain a lot of insight without having to spend a lot of money and a lot of time. Secondly, training with other guys is really great because there's accountability. You shoot, they see what you hit, and there's also a healthy competition, which I think is also great. Mm-hmm. And once you build reps in with those fundamentals, you start to gain muscle memory, and you free up bandwidth to be able to start solving problems. So that's when you can start moving with guys. That's when you can start strategizing and have and considering how do we tactically move? How do we communicate with one another? How do we engage in targets in different scenarios? So it's like, it's all really important. It's all to build up to how it's all to build up to be effective in being able to use a firearm with a group of people in order to protect those who we have committed to protect. So yeah, day one was great for that.
I think if I could add something too, maybe you're thinking, oh man, what tactical movements, bounding drills, what I don't plan on doing it. What are these guys even talking about? This is like, not only is it good drills to do in terms of just for that exact purpose, however, well, you're learning to shoot better, you're learning to manipulate your weapon, you're learning to maneuver your weapon, you're learning the functionalities of your weapons and all this stuff that, yeah, maybe you're never bounding with a group of guys to, you know, attacking force on something. Okay, that's, you know, God forbid, we never have to do that kind of stuff. But the idea is you're getting familiar and comfortable that you don't even think about stuff. You know, a result we were looking at just briefly over some of the footage from yesterday. I just noticed that one of my mag reloads was like super smooth. I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about that. And that's not chiming on. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It's more of like, those drills, those things I'm doing, like I'm seeing those results. And it was the middle of a bounding drill. The goal wasn't about reloads.
And you weren't really overthinking it. You just did it when you needed it.
Yeah, it's like those are results going on. Now we're doing a drill that's about bounding. It has nothing to do with the reloads and all that stuff. We're not that, but those skills overlap each other.
You didn't need to think about the reload.
So that's it helps gain more expertise on manipulating the firearm.
Oh.
Chad's gonna make a T-shirt for himself that says "My reloads are smooth."
Smooth is fast.
Yeah, no, that's good, and that's for those who the language is maybe kind of new to them. Bounding is kind of where you leapfrog with other people. So you have multiple, easy for me to say, multiple people in a line or close-ish together. They don't even have to be close together, but the point is you're in proximity, and in order to move from one point to another, you kind of leapfrog each other, and there's this awareness of each other's position. And then you're kind of moving as a group, but you're taking turns doing that. And I think that's cool that what you're seeing is when you have a specific task to focus on, you can actually focus on that task, and the administrative stuff is just second nature now because you've practiced it.
Yeah.
And if you aren't at that level, which is fine, that's totally fine. Everybody is in their own place in their shooting journeys. But let's say you're like, man, I really need to think about how my gun works and how to reload this thing. It takes your mental bandwidth away from the thing that you're actually trying to accomplish, and tunnel visions you right onto like, okay, how do I make the gun do gun stuff? And now it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen to your of course your proficiency, but also your firearm safety, your ability to think with the gun and complete tasks with the gun. So that's why it's like when you hear Chad advocating for that. My fan noise on my computer just got super loud. When you hear Chad advocating for that, it's actually pretty important to get those core skills to become an unconscious competence, so that you have the bandwidth to focus on the things that truly matter, which is problem solving.
Got one more thing I want to tie in too, because it kind of relates to what I was saying before.
No, you've hit your quota. You've hit your quota. No,
I was talking about before is like we was talking about training your gear, and we're talking about using equipment, and so you finding out things you don't like, and like those skills like the reloading, admin reloads, and those little things, those scenarios where we're doing bounding drills and whatnot. You're getting to use those skills. It's kind of like the equipment we're talking about. Now these skills are the same thing. You're using that skill in a scenario. So you're getting to use what you were practicing. Maybe you were practicing reloads. Well, it's easy to like focus in on like that and just practice reloads over and over again. But then using them in a scenario like that where you don't know when you're going to have to reload. You're just, suddenly I'm out. Bam. It's practicing. It's just like using your gear. You're using your skills.
I think a way to make that really easy for pretty much any audience, for any adult, is when you practice driving a car, there's a lot of fundamental steps. You practice accelerating, you practice braking, you practice turning, and when you're first learning how to do those things, it's really difficult to be able to pay attention to traffic lights, to be able to recognize that you need to yield, understand what all the rules are. So you need to get comfortable operating the piece of machinery, and once you get comfortable, it becomes second nature, but it takes time. And there's ways to do it without, like Chad said, going to the range and spending money on ammunition. There's things you can do at home, but we definitely encourage going out and shooting the gun with live ammo. But I found that helpful to just think it's a piece of machinery, and you trying to isolate certain things when you first start is really helpful, so you're not getting overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, okay, I got to do that, then this, do that. It's just like, how about you just practice releasing the magazine and putting it back in, so you get familiar with that tactile feel. Do it over and over again, and eventually it starts to become more comfortable, where you're just like, oh yeah, that's just, it kind of fits in like that, and I can just kind of get it. And if it doesn't, you're not so overwhelmed. You're just like, oh, I gotta adjust it real quick, and it's not even conscious. It really isn't. So that's what's really neat about this, and about humans in general, is just willingness to continue to just put in the time. Really pays dividends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Cool. So before we keep going, for the people listening, I just want to discuss briefly the types of drills that we did and the training value behind each drill, recognizing that our goal was to fit these specific rifle drills in a half day. which we sort of did. Okay,
Pretty good.
we went a little over.
Well, it was warm out, and we were making sure that we were staying hydrated and taking adequate breaks because it becomes unsafe to continue to try to do that stuff.
Thank you for being the voice of reason. Yeah. I think there are a lot of people who are just like,
it was hot.
Tough it out, train, do whatever you have to, and it's like, it's not, that juice ain't worth the squeeze. So
you tough it out too long, then you just limit on what you can do later.
Yeah, very true.
You're just actually losing time.
But I'm just going to walk through these drills, and then again, keep in mind the purpose of this first day was to just help equip us and show us, kind of help pressure test us for the next day when we're doing scenario stuff. So maybe you hear some of these drills and you're like, well, that's weird that they chose to do that, or oh, why did they do that specific drill first and then that drill? I feel like another drill should have fit in between there. This isn't a rifle class. This was tailored drills to help us practice certain fundamentals that we were confident we were going to be using the next day. The first drill that we did was a very simple standing group shooting drill, but we did it from multiple distances. We started from about 40 yards, and then we moved up 10 yards and then did the group again, it just 3-round groups, which is not very many. The goal with that group shooting was, first of all, just to confirm, if I had time, I could hit what I'm aiming at. But also, as we moved up, we wanted to see what was happening to our groups. Our groups are drifting down, or they're staying pretty consistent, but just understanding with the optic that I'm using as my distance to target changes, what's going to happen to my groups, and just understanding that concept in a very just close up and simple context. The next drill that we did was a doubles drill. This is very plainly just to help us mitigate recoil, understand what happens when I pull the trigger. Am I sending one round perfectly into the center of the A zone and the next round goes high? Am I pushing my rounds to the left? Seeing that and then being able to kind of use it like an instant feedback loop to correct yourself and then do it again. You learn a lot really quickly. So we did that for a while. We did that from multiple distances as well when we were shooting on the steel to see, okay, how far back can I get and double tap that trigger and keep my rounds on target. Just knowing that on our scenario day, we're going to be engaging targets at a variety of distances. Some of them are going to be quite far, and just knowing what our skills are capable of. So I highly recommend doing a drill like that. You can learn a lot about your recoil management. We did a team advancement drill. It's a very simple drill where you basically stand in a line and you walk forward towards a target while engaging. This is where the guys are like, yeah, moving and shooting sucks. It does. It really does. The goal of this drill was to, number one, actually demonstrate that, because if you're in the woods and, like Chad said, if the goal is suppressing fire, then it's like, okay, yeah, you can do that while moving. But if your goal is to take effective shots, it's very difficult to do that, especially the further back the target gets. So starting at like the 50-yard line or 40-yard line and walking towards the target, and your goal being, I want guaranteed hits, and realizing like, wow, that's actually harder to do than I thought it was. Even as you get a little bit closer, it's just like, okay, that informs me to say that maybe I should move and then shoot, versus moving and shooting, because those rounds, especially when I'm carrying, only a few mags on my body, those rounds are precious, and I don't want to waste them. But again, there is strategy behind suppressing fire, so I'm not knocking that, but just again, every drill has the specific things it's trying to teach you, but it also has its limitations. There's no such thing as one perfect drill that encompasses all things. So we did that. Then we did a drill that had us practice our muzzle awareness between high port and low port, moving around no-shoot targets. Then we did a 3-position barricade drill, pretty self-explanatory, but we did standing, kneeling, and laying down. We also did some administrative tasks from those different positions just to make sure, like, okay, you're laying on the ground. Can you still access the equipment you need to access? And then we did the bounding drill that Chad referred to, where we're kind of leapfrogging around each other. That one was really, the goal with that one was intended to have us move, shoot, and communicate, and do so in a way that was effective, fast, where we were we're achieving what we needed to achieve, and everybody was on the same page. It wasn't just, well, sure, we're moving, we're shooting, we're communicating, but no one is aware of what anyone else is doing. We're all just kind of doing our own thing, but just really being good at working together. And then the last one we did, arguably the most controversial drill of the day, was a T drill where basically the goal of this drill, I'm not going to get into the details of how the drill works per se. I guess I will. So imagine a T, and at the base of the T is a no-shoot target, and then at the top of the T are your shooters at each end. The goal is to have your shooters move to the edges of the T until they have a clear shot at the steel targets behind the no-shoot. And the goal is just to demonstrate, hey, if you need to take a shot past a friendly or a no-shoot, this is roughly how far you need to move in order to achieve that. So that's I think that's all all the hammering I'm gonna do on that nail. But I wanted to ask you guys specifically, out of the drills that we did, what were some of your favorite drills and why?
Well, bounding's always fun. It's not the first time I've done a bounding drill before, but it's always good because I think it helps highlight the need to communicate if you're working within a team, just so you're aware of what the other one's doing. Like if you're so. Obviously, one of the goals there is others are providing suppressing fire, I'm using that term again, to cover you while you're moving. So there needs to be awareness that you're going to be moving so that they know that, all right, it's time to fire. And it's just good practice. The first time, we walked through it a couple times. It took us a while to kind of get the flow of that.
I think the thing that threw us off is that there's 3 of us.
Yes,
and the math is really easy to play leapfrog with 2 people, but once you add a third person in,
yes, definitely. I've never done it with 3 people before. It's always been battle buddy, basically. Yeah. And I've done it moving forward and backwards, which is something, because idea is like a retreating kind of thing or assaulting kind of thing.
Yeah.
What else did I like? I mean, obviously all the drills were pretty fun. I learned something about the 3 position one. I need to dry fire, this, if lack of a better word, is going with kit on. This is another thing why it's important to train in your stuff, your gear, because getting up and down with a rifle properly in your kit is awkward. It was not so much I am a larger dude. I could definitely be in better shape, but I'm not that weak. It was just weird. It's where do I put my hands to properly get up? So I don't look like I'm just using my rifle as a cane to get up. Once we kind of walked through it, I kind of understood my body mechanics of how to properly get up, up and down from prone to kneeling to standing. Standing and prone is standing and kneeling is easy, but it's the prone back up to kneeling, back down to prone. It's easy to hit the dirt. It's harder to get up and look good. Not just look good, that is important, but not look like you're getting out of an old folks' home.
That's the most important thing, is looking good. If you don't look cool, it's really not worth doing.
It's all about the aesthetic.
We're being sarcastic, in
yes.
case you can't tell. One thing I do want to hit on is one thing that we kind of came into contact with the bounding drill was kind of getting sucked into how we thought the drill should go and what made sense. And at some point, we just realized, okay, we're overthinking this. The drill is supposed to accomplish something specific, and that's to get you to move and communicate. And then, of course, shooting is in there as well. But if you're spending so much brain power trying to figure out, okay, this person moves here, then this person moves here, and then you count to 3, you spin around 3 times, and you blink really fast, and then this person moves, and it's okay. Just take it down a notch, and just whatever you need to do to accomplish the core of the drill, then just do that. If you need to simplify something, then simplify it. If you just need to actually take away some of the rules, not safety rules, but some of the rules of the drill, just to say okay, it doesn't have to be that complicated. We just need to move and communicate. If it looks a little messy, that's okay, as long as the fundamental that we're working on, that is achieved. Because I think sometimes people And you see this in classes too, where an instructor's like, I had a great idea for this drill, this pistol drill, shoot the triangle, then shoot the square, then shoot the circle, and then it's like, oh man, wait, shoot the square, when? And you kind of just get so caught up in the drill itself, you lose the actual benefit of like, oh, what this person is trying to teach me is to take precise shots. Like, it's not actually about the circle, the triangle, square. Some instructors forget that. They get so sucked into, this is the drill, we got to do the drill, how the drill goes, and you lose what you're actually trying to achieve. So if you're going to go out and you're going to try some of this stuff and you're going to work with your tribe, it's helpful to plan ahead and map out the type of drills that you want. But when things start to get a little confusing and logistics just don't work out how you thought they were going to, don't let that stop you. It probably just means you need to simplify something.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I see, Jansen, you're nodding your head. What?
That in the history of when I've been training with Andrew, there's probably been a dozen times where I've often gotten overly frustrated, not due to anything Andrew has done, but just due to the nature of how certain
Mainly because of how I look.
That's the second reason. Maybe the third. No. I digress. But I often get overly frustrated with these. How do I articulate this? Drills that are. It feels as if most of my bandwidth is trying to remember what I need to do specifically. Like, I got to shoot this target, then this target, then this target, then this target. I don't see how there's a great transfer to real world situations, because oftentimes, I would assume 99% of the time, when we find ourselves having to use our firearm for defense, we do not know ahead of time what is happening. But I think it's best to focus on, all right, what is the fundamental skill we're trying to learn here? Is it moving and communicating? It doesn't really matter if, Andrew moves first, then Chad moves first, then I move first. Ultimately, it's we're here and we're trying to get here. Mm-hmm. And one of us is just going to call out, like, they feel like moving, so we're going to say move, and then they move. And then we adapt to that. We have to be adaptable. So, yeah, back to what I was saying. I often can get overly frustrated where it's like, wow, this is a really elaborate scenario. And I'm like, who's Jeff? Who's Adam? Like, who's the bad guy? I move where? It's just like, I think there's some benefit to that. But, like Andrew was saying, simplifying things and trying to isolate and ask the question, what is the skill we're trying to train?
Yeah. I think there are some competition shooters who might cringe at what I'm about to say, but when Jansen and I go out and we'll do pistol stuff and we'll set up a bunch of USPSA type silhouettes, we'll set up a bunch of them on the range. And it's like, okay, which one do you shoot when? And we don't just because we have to travel out to do range stuff, we don't like to carry a bunch of visual barriers with us. So you're kind of just looking at all the targets, and maybe we'll set them up in a ways that when you're facing this direction, you really kind of only see these few, and then you have to turn around, and now you kind of only see those few. But instead of just being like, okay, shoot this one, then that one, then this one, then that one, I'll just write a number on them. And it's like, okay, these 3 targets have a number 1. Guess what? When you're at station 1, you're shooting those 3 targets. Guess what happens when you move to station 2? There's targets with the number 2 on them. And that way it's like, the goal of the drill is not to teach you to remember how many targets you're supposed to shoot that someone told you, 4 minutes ago. The goal is to teach you moving, shooting, target transition, engaging close targets and far targets, and being able to do follow-up shots, doing 2 shots on target, or however you want to run that. If you like to do 3 or 4 shots in the A, it's like that's the core of the drill. And your goal as an instructor should be to remove any distractions that get in the way of that. Now, I know that there are a lot of people out there like, oh, if you can't think your way through all that, then you shouldn't be out there carrying a gun. And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing here. There's a difference between allowing someone to be in a situation where they're processing realistic information, versus, someone a memory game where someone has to remember what the laws of physics are in your universe that you just invented. And I've seen that in good quality scenario drills, where there's just a field of no shoot targets and there's only a few shoot targets, and you have to walk through and say, okay, that's a person with a cell phone, not a gun. Ooh, that's a person with a hair dryer, not a gun. It's weird that they have a hair dryer, but whatever. I'm just going to keep walking. And you have to make these decisions. And then the instructor's like, see that gun that's like partially in their hand? And it's like, oh, really? It looks like it's on their hip. And it's like, well, no, it's falling out of their hand. And it's like, guns don't float in space. They fall to the ground. And then, like, it's like I'm struggling to understand the physics in this world that you created. And now I'm getting critiqued on, like, not interpreting this scenario correctly because no one told me that in this reality guns apparently float on pieces of paper. So the whole goal of what I'm trying to get at is you want to take away distractions so that people can react how they would genuinely react in that specific situation. And if you give just someone memory, like Chad was saying, like memory games, you're detracting from the core either fundamentals that you're trying to train on or the scenario that you're putting them in to see how they'll respond when they're in a very specific scenario.
I like that. I think you need to isolate scenario training versus, like, biomechanically, your body needs to know how to be able to transition, to rotate the torso, to be able to move from target to target. It's like, don't worry about whether they have a gun or not. It's like a basketball player doesn't need to be with every team member running plays. They're often practicing the fundamentals, shooting at different locations, and then you can start incorporating more complex scenarios. But it's like, you need to get the muscle memory down first, and then you can start solving problems in those types of situations. So it's like there's places to do it, there's times to do it, and I think they can be beneficial. But I think mixing them together can often make people who are trying to build fundamentals very frustrated. I like what you said, it can be distracting, very distracting.
And hey, I mean, if that's something that you just really enjoy as a firearms instructor, then I encourage you to make a class that is the memory game class. And everybody who likes to test their, they're the person who downloads those apps to test your memory because it's going to raise your IQ like 24 points or something. That's a class for them. And you can spend the whole time like, oh yeah, it was the blue and then the green and then the, orange. And it's like, that's fine. Yeah, I'm just saying you're probably not going to get a ton from that. I would so much rather do a force on force training or be put into a live fire scenario where, sure, you're shooting at paper, but you have to make realistic decisions that you might actually make at the grocery store or at your church or something like that. Okay, so sorry, that was a bit of a detour, but hopefully it was a helpful one. Andrew, what were some of your favorite drills and why?
Yeah.
From that morning specifically.
The ones that come to mind, the first one is the, I guess, what'd you call it, the double tap drill?
Yeah. You did really good on that, by the way.
That's very kind of you to say that. It exposes your... the first drill was group shooting. We were given ample time to be able to try to get as tight a groups as possible. But in a scenario where you're using a firearm, you may often not find yourself being allowed to wait 10 seconds in between shooting. You need to be able to put rounds on target very quickly to neutralize the threat. And this drill helped expose how well we mitigate recoil. And what I learned from that was, for me in particular, is tightening my core, making myself more rigid, increasing the overall mass that the firearm has to react against. And I found that my groups were really tight. It was really helpful. So I appreciate that one. I also enjoyed the, what was it, the barrier shooting?
Yeah.
The
barricade, yeah.
The barricade shooting. I think that was the first time I actually utilized barricades in order to stabilize my rifle.
Awesome.
And I utilized that today when we were out in the playground, as I would say.
Yeah. Out in the middle of the desert.
Out in the middle of the desert. And it really has built my confidence. It has now shown me that there is resources around me that I can utilize that can provide that cover and concealment can also provide me stability and greater accuracy and recoil mitigation. So I was really excited to be able to just become aware of that. And I enjoyed the standing, kneeling, prone, and that transition between those movements. So it taught me physicality does matter, especially physicality matters. I think those are the two that I really enjoyed. And then the bounding, that was fun. Once we started getting the communication down, we're like, this is typically what we'll say when we're doing this, and this is what the other members of the team will say when they're confirming. And that was fun, because that basically that was putting a lot of all the other drills kind of into practice, where it was just like, move. I would start moving, and then I'd get to the barricade, and I was like, oh, we just did a drill where I was able to, I realized I can stabilize my rifle, so I kneeled down, stabilize, boom, 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 I need to reloading, and, was able to just kind of put those previous drills into practice. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Using those tools you learned in a scenario.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. I would say I also probably enjoyed the bounding drill, just because a lot of these you can practice by yourself. You can do a doubles drill. You can practice moving then shooting, or moving and shooting. It's difficult to practice communicating with other people by yourself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So having the opportunity to communicate with you guys, and then it's like, oh, I yell reloading, and I notice someone says covering, and it's like, cool, I have time to get my mag back in the gun and then keep going, and then it's like, okay, cool, set, and then it's like, great, now that person is doing their stuff, and it's like, wow, this is cool. It's almost like we're an organized team.
Right.
Very fun. So what are some of the areas, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I really need to get better at this specific drill, but the fundamentals that these drills are teaching, what are areas that you want to improve in now going forward?
In relation to what we've been passing over the last 2 days, I think I want to improve my recoil management in terms of that second shot. Like I already mentioned, though, I need to improve on just dry fire from kneeling to prone back to kneeling, just so in kit, so it doesn't feel awkward. Trust me, it may sound weird, but as soon as you do it, it's like, it's a little weird. You're limited on hand space and stuff. So
yeah,
I would say those two.
Oh man, I don't.
You don't have any areas to improve because you executed
your words, not
flawlessly.
I think for me, I don't necessarily want to get better at moving and shooting, but it did humble me, and it did make me. It has made me so that I am much more. I'm less prone to possibly even doing that, because if I move up 5 feet and take a shot as I'm moving up that 5 feet, I'm likely gonna miss. So there was really no point in taking that shot. So all that time was kind of wasted. I could have moved up 5 feet quicker if I didn't take the shot and then stand still, and then I can take the shot. It was overall faster and more accurate. So that just kind of really drove the point home, where it's just like I'm going to be very not inclined to do that.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's exactly what I was hoping. I mean, it's like
that's with rifle. With pistol,
yeah.
I realize I'm able to. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But with pistol,
yeah.
it's just there's less weight to it. The biomechanics are differently, and I've trained a lot more with pistol than with rifle. But with pistol, I could see potentially doing that. I don't know if it would be a lateral movement, but yeah, rifle so much more. You have way more mass out there, more leverage. The recoil's greater, so that you're just fighting a lot more than with a pistol. But yeah, with rifle, yeah. See, you're just like, I'm so glad that you're done.
I mean, I acknowledge that, like, hey, you might find someone who's just amazing at it, and it's like, wow, they can move and shoot, and somehow they just land their shots. Yeah. The majority of people are like, oh, how hard can it be? And it's even with handgun, it can be very difficult. Like, it's cool that you're at a level where you're like, oh yeah, I can be very successful with that. But I mean, I think you'd also agree that you could be even more successful standing still.
Right. Like, why do I need to move forward at 0.5 miles per hour and reduce my rate of fire by half? Or I can just stand still. The bullet's going to get there quicker than me adding a few steps every second.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And and again, the goal isn't to be like, see, you suck at moving and shooting, or even with the handgun, like, okay, you're not as good as you would just be standing, and there you go. Now never do that. Like, never move and shoot. That's not the goal. The goal is to say, know your limits. And if you can nail targets while moving and shooting, or actually, I mean, that's even the thing when we started back at 40 yards. And I think everybody saw that the closer they got to the target,
absolutely,
while moving and shooting, the better it got. I mean, obviously, but that's just it. It's like, wow, okay, I started landing my shots consistently on target while moving at 30 yards or 20 yards. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, cool. You know where your limits are. If you want to get better at that, you can practice that. You can absolutely practice that. But just knowing that for most people, for obvious reasons, and for the reasons you just articulated very well, you can actually move faster if you're just moving, and then shoot better if you're just shooting.
Yeah.
And so if you practice that, like, I think that's a better place to put my training. And I'm not saying don't try to get good at moving and shooting. Just know where your limitations are so you're not throwing shots. Because when we're talking about a self-defense scenario in an urban environment where you're responsible for every bullet you fire until it stops moving, I can't afford to just be, pulling the trigger until eventually a shot lands. I really need to know that I can make that shot, and that shot isn't going to go somewhere where it's going to hurt someone who, in that instance, doesn't deserve a bullet. So
that's a wise consideration. That's you're accountable, as you say. You're accountable for every round that leaves that barrel, and I would rather not unintentionally hurt somebody that I'm trying to protect.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, other than that, I would say rifle manipulation when I'm going into the prone position, pinching that underneath, taking as I'm transitioning from either standing or kneeling into prone, getting that rifle underneath my armpit and pinching so that I'm able to drop down, use my other hand in order to help brace as I'm going down. I think that can be easy, but it's dependent upon how slack my sling is. If it's too tight or if it's too short, it's really difficult to do that, and I have to adjust my sling. So I think there's some equipment changes that can be made in order to make that easier, and I'm realizing I may need to upgrade my sling, but just getting comfortable with knowing when to keep the sling just like around my neck or around my neck, over my shoulder, and under my arm. I just think overall weapon manipulation with the sling is something that I could do more work with, and I don't even need to be at the range in order to do that. I can do that at home. But those drills exposed. Okay, there's some equipment issues, but there's also some skill issues. So
cool, I love it. So after we did a little more than a half day of doing the close range rifle drills, which again, like all these principles, even though we did them at close range, all translate over to longer distances. But we did want to get out there and do some shooting at distance to see, okay, what's going to happen ballistically when we take our 77 grain 5.56 round and start pushing it out there. So we relocated and we set targets out at, 100 yards, 200,
300.
We did a 300, we did a 400.
400 and a 600.
We skipped 5 because we were running out of targets, and then we had one final target at 600 yards. So what was your guys' experience? Because I know we have varying degrees of experience with shooting at long range. What did you guys think about that? Just the core fundamentals of stationary targets, stationary us. We're just going to lay prone and just see what our bullets can do.
Well, for me personally, it was the longest I had ever shot. I mean, my experience mostly has been gravel pits, so 100 yards. I think the most I've ever shot at before was 178 or 180 or something of the sort, just under 200. But once when we started doing these long range, shooting, we had something at 100, 200, 300, 400, and 600. Once I learned my holds, I could easily hit 200 all day, every day. 300 I got pretty consistent with, and then 33% consistency at 400 eventually. No, I didn't start out that way because I had to learn my hold. Especially I'm using a red dot with a magnifier, so I don't have a Christmas tree to be looking down and making understand my holds.
And you're doing, so it's 77 grain out of a 14-inch barrel?
14.5.
14.5.
With a suppressor. Suppressor does add a little bit of velocity. There is some more powder burning going on. But regardless, what's nice, and I'll say, is that transferred to the next day where we started doing our scenario-based shooting, because I now knew my holds. Like, we were hitting, first shot hits 250, 300 yards, not a problem. Because of this training we did the previous day. Because I didn't know my holds at past 200. I mean, I've never shot that distance
Never
before.
Never had the opportunity.
Where we live, at least in what would be the west coast of Oregon, is very dense forest. So there's not a lot of areas where there's large ranges. Now, it does exist, of course, but you just got to know where to go. And most times, most people aren't interested in doing that long stuff. So I hadn't had that experience before. But
yeah, you got to find nerds like us.
Yeah, and then once I think I hit 600 once. That was very difficult. 600 yard silhouette target.
Not with your AR though, right?
No.
Yeah.
That was with the 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a long range. That was with the bolt action. Handgun,
and that was. I mean, to be fair, so okay, the 6.5 Creedmoor round is plenty capable of making that shot,
yeah.
But that was a gun that you had never shot before.
Nope.
It was.
I don't know his hold. I didn't even know his zeros.
Yeah, we didn't even know his zero.
I wasn't gonna mess with his gun either.
Yeah, it was kind of just playing around with it. So I would say if we had that information, I think you would have been a lot more successful.
Yeah. If I had zeroed it myself and then understood the different markings basically.
Yeah. But Jansen, what was your experience?
Yeah, so I was shooting an AR 77 grain out of a 16-inch, and my setup is a red dot and 3 times magnifier. I have an astigmatism, so that red dot kind of gets blown out, so it can be difficult at further distances. The dot is pretty much as large as the target. But as I was telling the guys shortly before this podcast, there was I would say an increase of 100 yards in my 99% success of hitting. So what I mean by that is, before the magnifier, I would have a pretty consistent ability to hit at 100 yards with just the red dot. At 200 yards, it became more difficult. It was probably a 50 to 75% success rate. 300 was 1 in 10. But now that I have the magnifier, it essentially has made my 99% chance of hitting up from 100 yards to 200 yards, and that 50 to 75% chance of hitting up to 300 yards. 400 yards, I had no luck. But I really enjoyed that 77 grain round. All I have shot is 55 grain ball. And my holds for 100 yards, 200 yards, and 300 yards on a standard AR 500 silhouette plate was essentially center mass. And there was some lateral wind, and I was just hitting it. I didn't even have to change my holds, which was beautiful. I absolutely love that round. But yeah, I am definitely considering or investigating what does my optic game look like in the future. LVPO or a red dot that has holds. Who knows? But I would like to get out past 300, maybe 400, more consistent with that AR.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome.
I have another comment.
Oh, yeah, hit
Hit
it.
Something that I've learned as well is that it is incredibly difficult in order to be able to be prone and have the rifle stable without a bipod. I was using like my duffel bag, and I was like, do I rest my foregrip on it? The mag was too long, so that was hitting the ground. So it was just really awkward. I didn't have a good setup of being able to have a stable rifle. So it's a different beast. It's an entirely different beast, and I'm excited to learn more about it. But yeah, it's not as easy as you would think.
Yeah, I would actually add to that and say, being able to stabilize the front of the rifle, very important, but also the rear, because you can do a lot by digging your elbow into the dirt and then pinching the stock to your shoulder. But having a shooting bag underneath the stock just to really add to that stabilization, and then just adjusting your body and your gun to get a very good natural point of aim, to the point where you can just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and open your eyes and see, are my crosshairs or my dot still on the target? If it's not, if it shifted off that point, that means your natural point of aim is off. And you're like, okay, if I can shift it so that I can close my eyes, breathe in, breathe out, look at the target, and like, oh, dot's still there. And then now, great, keep your eyes open, exhale, pull the trigger. At the end of your exhale, your chances do increase. Like you can muscle the gun, but the more muscle tension you need to put into the gun, it's gonna take away from your ability to make precise shots at longer distances. So sorry, I won't get into that too much. But like all of these
incredible
pieces,
tension was used in order to I'm like, I have to use all my energy, and I'm like, boom, and it just felt so exhausting because I didn't have the equipment to be able to lift that heavy load off. I had to do it with all my muscle, and after I did it a few times, I was starting to fatigue, and the consistency was starting to disappear.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. And so, my experience was, I had the Daniel Defense 16-inch with a 1 to 6 power optic on top. I think prior to being in this spot, the furthest I had gotten out with that thing was probably 200 to 300 yards. And being able to get out to 600 was awesome. And I was getting like first round impacts at 600 with that optic, but also having the stability that you're talking about. So I did have a bipod. I did have a shooting bag for the stock, and was able to just really focus on getting my crosshairs to rest on that target, so that when I pulled the trigger, all the bullet had to do was fly and hit. So I don't know, it wasn't 100% success rate, but it was probably about 70 to 80% were hits. So that's where it's just like understanding the equipment that you have, what the limitation of the equipment is, what your goal is. Because if you're like, well, man, I don't have any opportunities to shoot long range where I'm at, and any self-defense situation that I'm in would have me shooting under 100 yards, then you don't need to invest in a bunch of long range equipment. But if you live in an area that's very open, and it might be common for you to, whether it's hunting scenario or if you anticipate self-defense scenario where you're engaging at over 200 yards, just knowing what the limitation of your equipment is. And we are going to pause part 1 right there. Please pick up with us at part 2, where we talk more about the scenario-based training that we did, some of the logic behind it, and what we learned largely about our equipment and gear, things that we liked, things that we didn't like. We get into all of that in part 2. So please join us again, and until then, see you on the range.